Hello, welcome to Handwritten Wines. My name is Bill Miller and I'm the tasting room manager here at Handwritten. I'm so excited I'm going to be your host today. I'm going to guide you through the 4 wines we have selected for your to-go pack. We're just going to geek out on wine. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on drinking these wines and some of the tasting notes that I get, maybe some food pairings, and we're just going to have some fun. This is what wine's all about. Wine's about bringing people together, family and friends, throwing some wine, throwing some food, and truly some of the best things in this world are sitting at a table enjoying wine, and that's what I love about this wine world. So Handwritten, if you've never been here before, we just opened a new tasting room January 2nd, 2020, and I'm sitting here enjoying this beautiful room. If you could see outside, this whole entire building is wrapped in reclaimed redwood vats. So 100-year-old vats, and we have this building completely lined. We are a green company, so we really like to use reclaimed products. We do recycling. We make sure we're doing composting. All of our paper is recyclable, and we just want to make sure that we are giving back to our community and our environment. We also want you to come back by bringing those bottles that you have for your wines, bringing them back to us, and we're going to give you a 10% discount so we can recycle those. We don't usually give very many discounts with our wines, so this is definitely a special opportunity. Well, let's talk about Handwritten, shall we? So Handwritten, we do about 2,000 cases a year. We're really small. Every one of our wines is coming from 2 acres. They're coming up from the mountain and the hillside of the Napa Valley. So very small production, very handcrafted wines, and sometimes we're only doing maybe 150, 160 cases of these wines. Our Pinot Noir is one of our higher produced wines, just over 300 cases. So these are such small production that we do no distribution. You really can get our wines just by visiting us in the tasting room, ordering online, or of course becoming one of our wine club members, because that's the best way to get it. You get a shipment twice a year and you always are making sure you're stocked with our wines. But another thing about Handwritten is that our story really started out of my sister winery called Jessup Cellars. So we're all the way down here in Soyo, they're all the way up in Noyo, so North Yountville, South Yountville. It's really truly what we call this little town. We're all of a mile long here in Yountville, but it's kind of fun to break it up and call it Noyo and Soyo. Midjo is only about a block and a half up. If you've been to Bouchon or the French Laundry, that's Midjo. All right, now you're in the know. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through our little packet and just kind of see what we have in here. So one of the very first things, you're gonna get this little bag, and we have, of course, our map of the Napa Valley. We use this very, very often in our tasting room because with us, we're gonna show off these little 2 acres and how some of these Cabernets are affected by the different climates and temperatures. So pretty fun. Gotta love a Napa Valley map. Of course, we gotta give you some glassware. So we have some to-go vino glasses. So if you're out and about, you can have these, or if you're in a hotel room, these will work. You can also have a crystal glass. I happen to have those too. So we got the napkins, compostable, of course. So those are for you with Handwritten's little logo on there. Let's see what else we have in here. Of course, we're gonna have a little pen, some information about Handwritten, wine club, order forms if you wanna get some more wine because you're gonna enjoy it that much. We have, Flupas. So these are a staple. If you've ever visited us in the old cottage, we had these in our old little place and we just love these. So these are imported from Switzerland and they really are this cheesy, buttery bite. They're flour, water, salt, cheese, and butter. They're a Tête de Moine cheese and they are beautiful on the palate. So the reason we're using these is that fat. Fat works well with wine. So a lot of times you always hear us talking about doing a Cabernet with a big fatty steak. Well, there's some science behind this. And really how our palates work is if we eat fatty food, it actually coats our palate. So after about 3-4 bites of eating a fatty steak or some fatty food, we truly coat our palate and we don't exactly taste that food exactly the same as we did with those first 3 bites. But we have this memory recognition that kicks in. And what happens is that we remember those first bites being so delicious. Maybe you made a noise as you're kind of shoveling that into your mouth. So what happens, you kick in, you remember those first 3 bites being so good, you actually continue shoveling the food into your mouth. or gracefully putting into your mouth. But the rule of thumb is when I have fatty food and I coat my palate, some tannic wine is gonna help to reset the palate. So what happens in the wine world is that tannin is coming from the skins of the grapes, so the thicker the skins of the grapes, like Cabernet, you're gonna have more tannin structure. So what tannin does is it binds with the protein in your saliva, strips that moisture out, and kind of gives you that drying effect. So the rule of thumb is I have a little bite of my fatty food, a little sip of my tannic wine, and it kind of resets my palate and lets me enjoy that food and that wine throughout the entire meal. So there's a little tip for you. It's kind of fun. Now here's the thing. It's your wine, your food, your palate. You can do whatever the heck you want. But there is some guidelines behind that. All right, so that's the Flufas. Cheesy, buttery bites. Delicious. Once you open the bag, you're going to have to eat the whole thing. Sorry. And you're welcome at the same time. Truffle chips. So these are white truffle. Very mild on the palate. These are going to go beautifully. Kind of that earthy note, that umami with the Pinot Noir. Also, once you open this bag, you're probably gonna eat the whole thing too, because they're really delicious. So we have that in the kit. And then of course we have some little chocolate almonds, which is delicious. Handwritten wine key, always good to have. Just remember, you gotta pack it in your luggage. If you're taking it home from the Napa Valley, you can't go on top of the plane, otherwise they confiscate it. I've learned the hard way. But these are always fun to have. You can never have too many wine keys, and you can throw it in your car. You never know, right? All right, then we're gonna have our little bottles of wine. I actually have them over here. So we have our little bottles. This is gonna be about a pour for about 2 people. You can maybe squeak 3 out of there, but really 2 people. We have them labeled with our little seals, so we're gonna drink those and kind of just geek out. So that's our little packet. Kind of going back with Handwritten, we, like I said, started out of my sister winery, Jessup Cellars. Handwritten started in 2009. We released our wines in 2012. And that's where we kind of first started being able to pour our wines out of a little cottage up in St. Helena. Then we moved to a new cottage up in Noyo, and then we built this place down in Soyo. So this is where our story begins. But as I mentioned a little earlier, my sister winery, Jessup Cellars. So we have the same owners, the same winemaker. His name is Rob Lloyd. We're going to talk about him a lot today. And it's really beautiful that Rob has 2 different wineries that he's making wine for. Jessup does about a 10 to 11,000 case production, and they're going on over about 24, 25 years now. So they do some beautiful wines as well. They're kind of known as the art of the blend. We're here at Handwritten, we're for Cabernets. That's kind of what we're all about. So we are doing cabs, and we basically say that we are the tail of the terroir. The terroir meaning everything that encompasses a vineyard to make these grapes grow. So are we ready to drink some wine? I know I am. So one other little tip I'm gonna give you. You can take this or leave this, but this is something that in the wine world, it really kind of seems silly, but it is actually really important. Water. So water definitely makes for a better tomorrow. There is no doubt about that. But water and wine, you kind of need both. And here's what I mean. So what I always love to do is I like to start with some water in the day before I go do wine tasting. And the rule of thumb is if I have not started drinking water by the time I started wine tasting, I'm already behind schedule. And here's why, is that we kind of talked about tannin. Tannin binds with the protein in your saliva and strips that moisture out. So if I am dehydrated, I've gone tasting for a few days, maybe I was traveling, just not having enough water. So if I don't have proper saliva, there isn't the proper protein for the tannin to bind to. So what happens, it brings on really astringent or bitter flavors. So it actually can change the flavor of your wine tasting. So drink water throughout your day. It really does help you do a better day of tasting. It helps for better purchasing decisions. It helps with a better tomorrow, but it really just keeps your palate fresh, and it really makes the day such more enjoyable. So with that, let's have a little sip of water. All right, wonderful. So we're gonna get ready to do our very first wine, which is gonna be our 2016 Pinot Noir. Now, our winemaker, Mr. Rob Lloyd, I just mentioned his name. He's a great guy. Just was able to hang out with him a few days ago. Really enjoy talking to him. He just knows so much. He's so passionate, and he just puts a love into these wines. And when I talk about handcrafted, really, Rob, these are handcrafted wines. Rob's out in these little 2 acres, these vineyards. He really knows what's going on in these vineyards. He has a degree in, actually a master's in viticulture. He studied how to grow grapes. He also has a degree in enology, winemaking from UC Davis. So really kind of a double whammy, Mr. Rob Lloyd. He just brings so much to the table, and it's just beautiful that he makes 2 different sets of wines with Jessup and Handwritten. And he also makes his own personal brand called Lloyd, which are some delicious wines as well. So with that said, Rob Lloyd loves some Pinot Noirs. So this is gonna be our first wine. So I'm gonna pause for just a second. I'll let you kind of get situated, and you're gonna get your glasses out, maybe get everything lined up, and we're gonna do our first wine. So I'm gonna put on pause, let you get situated, and then when you're ready, hit unpause, and I'll be here waiting for you, and we're gonna do some Pinot Noir. All right, cheers. Welcome back. Are you ready for some Pinot Noir? I know I am. So our Pinot Noir is actually coming from outside the Napa Valley. So Rob Lloyd, our winemaker, he studied the Pinot skins for part of his studies at UC Davis. And really, the Pinot skins are very thin-skinned, very delicate, temperamental, complex little grapes. They're actually one of the harder grapes to grow, and they have to grow in cooler climates. So for us in the Napa Valley, we typically grow our Pinot Noir kind of down here in the south end of the valley in the Carneros district. It's really close to the San Francisco Bay, so we call that our air conditioner. Keeps those Pinot grapes nice and cool, which is perfect for those thin-skinned grapes. Pinots also grow really well over in the Russian River Valley, so over in Sonoma County, along the California coast, up in Mendocino, up in Oregon. These are all great regions for Pinot Noir, but based on where they're grown, you're gonna get a little different nuances of flavors and aromas, and that's part of the beauty of wine. So when Rob decided to do a Pinot Noir for us, he said, we're gonna go outside the Napa Valley. In fact, we're gonna go outside of Northern California. We're gonna go more Southern California. We're gonna go to Santa Rita Hills, Santa Barbara County. So just kind of as a point of reference, if you were in the town of Santa Barbara and went up about 12 miles up the road along the coast, you'd be in this district called Santa Rita Hills. If you've never been to Santa Barbara, how about Los Angeles? So if you were to get in a car, drive up from Los Angeles along the coast of California, you'd be there in about 2.5 hours. For us up in the Napa Valley, if we were to drive down south, it would take us 6 to 7 hours down there. So definitely this district is closer to Southern California, considered Central California, and this is where we're getting our Pinot. So this district has become known for some of the best Pinots in the United States. It just has perfect conditions. And the reason is that this is an east to west valley. Here in the Napa Valley, we're a north to south valley, but this east to west valley is split by the Santa Ynez River. It dumps out in the Pacific Ocean, and what happens is this river is going to help to bring in some air, some movement of air, and suck in the fog and keeps these grapes nice and cool till about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. We warm up to the mid 70s. We keep a nice, even, constant temperature, and with that, it is perfect conditions for Pinot. That fog comes in later in the afternoon as well. So this is coming from a little 2 acres up on the hillside, because we always do 2 acres for us at Handwritten, and it's called the Rio Vista Vineyard. In fact, when Rob flies down there, he says when he goes and walks through these vineyards, he's always kind of having to dust off his jeans. It's this white, ashy, powdery soil. They call it a coastal desert, and really just some beautiful conditions for Pinots. So with that said, let's get our little Pinot bottle. We're gonna crack that open. Now I'm gonna use a Pinot glass. That's a Pinot Noir glass. It's a little bit wider base to kind of help show off some of those aromas, where this Cab glass over here is a little different shape, but this is a true Pinot glass. Any glass would work for this. You want a little bigger glass for your Pinots or your red wines, a little smaller glass for your white wines. And it's really about aroma expression. White wines are a little cooler, so you don't get as much aroma expression. When wines get a little more chilly, you're gonna actually have less aromas. When wines get too hot, you kind of degrade them, and basically you're bringing on alcohol smells, making it bitter and astringent. So that's why we have certain temperatures for our wines. We use a little bigger glass because we want to release those aromas. 75 to 80% of wine tasting is smell. And that's kind of why we use a crystal glass, or if we're going to use even this glass, our little to-go glass, what we want to do is we don't want to pour past the widest part in the bowl. Same with this. So what happens is the shape of the glass, but this is really helping us to release those aromas. Our nose is really hardwired into our brain. We still smell on our palate while we're tasting wine, but part of the reason we smell and spin our glasses is to release those aromas. It really evokes emotion. All right, so this is our 2016 Pinot Noir. It is 10 months in the barrels. It is 100% new French oak, and we're doing a little over 300 cases of this particular wine, and it's just really, really, really delicious. So a little guideline, a little tip, 3 sips. First sip, I'm never gonna count. My first sip's gonna fight what's ever on my palate from before, or the wine before. If I did maybe a white wine's gonna be a little bit more acidic. It's gonna actually make me salivate. Or we're gonna get to red wines, we're gonna get a little more tannin structure out of the Pinot. Not a lot, because it's a thinner skinned grape, but we do get some tannin, and tannin actually binds with that protein in your saliva. So it kind of strips that moisture out. So first sip, we don't count. Whatever's left on our palate, we gotta kind of readjust. That second sip's a little bit more our true flavor, and our third sip is really our yay or our nay. And it's really kind of amazing, and this is life-changing in the wine world. It will kind of change the game of wine tasting. And my best analogy, it's the way we are built as humans. So my best analogy is if you've ever had the opportunity to brush your teeth and drink a glass of orange juice. Yep, I know some of you just made that face. So that first sip, you're like, it's horrible. You go for that second sip and you're like, okay, a little better, but still horrible. You go for that third sip, you really have readjusted that palate. Fourth sip, you're ready to go and drink that orange juice. So that's kind of the same in this wine world, is that the 3-sip rule, you kind of want to give your palate the time to adjust and really get to know that wine before you make the decision. So in the wine world, do a little spin, coat your glass, gonna smell. Get some of those flavors and smells out of there. Here's the thing, we all get something a little different. If you don't get what I say, it is totally okay, because this is my nose, this is my experience. These are the smells and flavors that I know in the wine world. If you've never had a blackberry, and I keep saying I get blackberry, hey, that would not be your descriptor. You're gonna come up with something that you know, and that's really important. So with that, I'm gonna give it a little spin. All right, and then we're gonna have a little sip because I'm parched. I know you are. Okay, so some of the smells that I'm getting are kind of like, I get a little bit of raspberry, I get some strawberry, a little bit of black cherry, I get like a bit of a cedar note. I get a little bit of smoke component. The smoke component is something that's indicative of this particular district called Santa Rita Hills. It's kind of funny, I was looking at our tasting notes, and it says basically a charred cedar plank. So I get a little bit of the cedar, I definitely get that smoke, and so we use that descriptor. And here's the thing, if you've never had a charred cedar plank, it would not be your descriptor you're throwing out. But I do get definitely those components for me. It's nice and dark, a little darker in color. We leave the grapes on the skins, or basically we leave it on the skins a little longer so we get a little more color extraction, a little bit more tannin. Let's give it a second sip. Kind of some warm spices in there. So kind of what we learned a little earlier is that tannin and fat are a match made in heaven. So Pinot, a little less tannin structure. So for me, what I do for pairings are less fatty foods. I'm gonna do something like salmon, steelhead trout, pork tenderloin, your Thanksgiving meal. So pork chop. So I usually do not do heavier fatty foods with this. Once again, it's your food, your wine, your palate. You can do whatever the heck you want. So let's go for our third sip. Sometimes you just have to have a moment. So this is our 2016 Pinot Noir. It is $65 a bottle, and it's just a beautiful, a little bit more full-bodied, some kind of nice silky smooth tannins, a little bit of acidity, and this is what we get for our Pinot Noir. So cheers. All right, we're gonna put me on pause, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna do our next wine, which is gonna be our 2016 Carneros. So we'll get ready for that. Cheers. All right, welcome back. So we're gonna use our cab glass here, and we're gonna do our 2016 Carneros Cabernet. So a few things about Cabernets here. So Cabernet is definitely one of our big crops here in the Napa Valley. It is what's kind of made us famous as well. So Napa Valley definitely are known for these cabs, and this is coming from a little 2 acres from the Truchard family. So this is a unique Cabernet to the Napa Valley. This is actually grown in what was traditionally known as Pinot Chardonnay country, the Carneros district. So Carneros is going to be all the way down here in the south end of the valley. It really is going to be one of our cooler climates because of the San Francisco Bay. That fog is going to linger down there a little bit longer than it does up in other parts of the Napa Valley. So this is a unique cab. We were one of the first to grow cab down there. We did learn in the 90s that Merlot and Syrah does well in the Carneros district, but what we also learned when we planted is that this needs to go up into the mountains. So this first cab is coming from the highest 2 acres within Carneros. The first 2 acres to see sun. Let's grab our bottle. So it's the first 2 acres to see sun, where that fog kind of lingers down below. It faces out to the west, so it gets nice hot afternoon sun. And here in the Napa Valley, we have all these different soil types because we have Mount St. Helena at the very top of the valley. We have Mount George at the bottom of the valley. Active volcanoes gives us all this volcanic soil. We have all these subsoils that have mixed together, but we have about 16 different soil types out of 32 on Earth, and then all these subsoils. So we just have these perfect conditions, perfect soils, perfect temperatures for Cabernet. So this is gonna have this white ash in the soil. It's gonna heat up during the day and radiate heat back into the canopy at night, a little bit of reflection. So this first cab is truly coming from the warmest 2 acres within Carneros, and the highest 2 acres as well. So let's give this a little pour. Once again, not going past the widest part in the bowl so we can get our best aroma expression. So we're gonna go ahead and give this the 3 sips, kind of spin it around. You know, another thing I like about my wines, I do like a little decant. So when you do a tasting here at Handwritten, we usually have the wines pre-poured for you about 30 minutes before you get here. So, you know, a nice 20-minute, 30-minute decant is great. You know, the great thing about our wines, you can definitely pop them and drink them right away, but they do well with a little decant. Some of that oxygen starts breaking down the tannin, which becomes a little bit silkier, smooth on your palate, and that's part of the fun of wine tasting. So we're gonna give it this little taste. We're gonna do our first sip because we know we're not gonna count that, right? All right, let's do it. Okay. So you see me smelling. We smell like we talked about. So just something real quick. You know, most of us when we smell, we go to the bottom of the glass, which is what human nature does. I've done this for a while, and we go to the bottom of the glass, but your bottom of your glass is your alcohol. If you go to your top of your glass, that's more your cherries and berries and fruit flavors. If you actually hold your glass by the foot of the glass and don't keep the glass tilted, I want it more flat. I want you to put your nose right in the center. That's the oak. Boom. So pretty cool. You can break down some flavors and smells within a wine glass. So when I smell, what I like to really do is I put my bridge of my nose on the top of my glass, and depending on the shape of your nose, you know, we're all a little different. And what we're gonna do is really want to place our nose right in the center of that glass. So give it a little spin, coat to release aromas. Go ahead and smell it. That encompasses the fruits, the berries, the oak, and the alcohol. And there's a little tip for you too. So there's our Carneros Cab. We're gonna go for that second sip because why not? Okay. So some things are happening with this wine. So being that Carneros is a little cooler climates are not gonna bring up tannin structure. It's gonna keep it a little bit more acidic, a little softer. So this isn't as bold and tannic as some of our other cabs that we have from other parts of the valley. In fact, we're gonna taste a couple of different cabs. And with our Cabernet program, they are all built exactly the same. All 100% cab. all 22 months in the barrels, all 70% new French oak and 30% neutral French oak. Really the difference between each of our cabs is the location. So location, 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 showing off microclimates. We have 60 microclimates here in the Napa Valley. We have all these soil types. So based on where these grapes are grown, you're gonna get different flavor, tannin, textures, and aromas. And that's what we're about at Handwritten, is really showing off these districts. And whether it's Carneros or Calistoga or Stag's Leap, each of these districts has its own unique expression, much like we all have our own unique expression through our handwriting. So boom, that's how we got called Handwritten, one of the stories. So with that all said, this is our Carneros. We're gonna go for that third sip. I love when wine just kind of makes you make noises. You just love it so much. You're just like, oh. That's what I love about wine. It evokes emotion. It is just such a beautiful thing. So let's talk about this Carneros Cab. A little cooler climate. It's gonna keep the acid up. It's a little bit more acidic than your typical Cabernet. It's gonna have a little softer tannins and a little bit more bright fruits. So for me, I'm getting a little bit of cranberry, raspberry, pomegranate. I get a little bit of a cedar. I get a little bit of a black pepper note. This is a wine that goes with lots of foods. You know, maybe not my big fatty steak, but it's gonna go with lots and lots of foods, and it's just a beautiful, unique wine to the Napa Valley. So this is our 2016 Carneros Cab, 100% Cab, 22 months in the barrel, 70% new French oak, 30% neutral French oak, coming from 2 acres in Carneros from the Truchard family. So cheers, enjoy. Go ahead and put me on pause, and we're gonna come back and do the Stag's Leap Cab. Cheers. All right, welcome back. We're gonna do the Stag's Leap Cab. So, like the rest of our cabs, this is coming from a different 2 acres. This is coming from the Stag's Leap district. So let's get our little handy map. All right, so we are here in Yountville. That's where we're at right now. Stag's Leap is gonna just be, if you could see, right up that hill. So we're not that far. We're less than a mile away from Stag's Leap District. So Stag's Leap, one of our famous districts. So you might be going, what? I thought that was a winery. Well, yes, it is. So we had something in May 24th, 1976 called the Judgment of Paris. There was a case of wine, Cabernet, brought over from Stag's Leap wine cellars, and it's one of the wines that won the blind taste test, and it's what really put the Napa Valley on the map. We also had a case of Chardonnay from Chateau Montelena. So these 2 wineries put the Napa Valley on the map in 1976. We've been growing grapes for years, but this really kind of created the boom and basically the appeal of this valley. So with that all said, Stag's Leap Wine Cellars and Stag's Leap Winery both wanted the name Stag's Leap. Because they're in the Stag's Leap district. So this is a true AVA, American Viticultural Area, appellation or district. These are all the same thing. So this is the Stag's Leap district, and what happened is that these 2 wineries went into a little bit of a lawsuit for several years, and what the judge ended up ruling was that one is gonna be Stag's Leap wine, so Stag's Leap Cellars is STAG''S, and then Stag's Leap Winery is STAGS''. So one got an apostrophe S, one got S''. The Stag's Leap District has no apostrophes, and that's kind of how it ruled. So our grapes are actually coming from the Stag's Leap District, 1,000 feet off the valley floor. This is actually one of the highest district or vineyards in the Stag's Leap District. This is also 100% Cab. This is 2 acres up on the hillside. This is all volcanic soil. So what's happening is we get hot afternoon sun over there. These volcanic soils heat up during the day, and basically the heat radiates heat back into the canopy at night, a little bit down into the roots, and adds more stress to the vines, creates a little smaller berry. So with that little more smaller berry, it's gonna actually bring on a little different tannin structure, a little bit more silky tannin. So let's go ahead and pour our Stag's Leap Cabernet from the Stag's Leap District. All right. And you know what's fun? If you have the opportunity, you're at home, pour all three of these cabs side by side. And it's really fun to have a few sips of this one, leave a little bit in the glass, then go back to the Carneros or go to the Calistoga and just do a little side by side like we do here in the tasting room. It's really fun to kind of geek out and really see how soils and temperatures affect those wines. All right, Stag's Leap. Let's give it a little spinny spin. Let's smell. Oh, I love this. Okay. So definitely getting some darker fruits. I'm getting a little bit of those kind of blackberries, a little bit of espresso bean. I get a little bit of like this volcanic spice, some kind of warm spices, maybe a little clove and nutmeg. There's a little bit of a floral component. It's really interesting. Sometimes in this district, the same vineyard site, I've gone through a few vintages here by working here, and some years I always get this little floral component. Sometimes it's a little lavender, sometimes it's a little violet. This is maybe a little bit of a rose petal, maybe a little bit of violet. So, these are some of the flavors and smells that I get out of this so far. So let's go ahead and have a few sips. We're gonna have that first sip to readjust the palate. All right. And sometimes you just like it from the first sip, and that's perfectly okay too. All right, here we go. Second sip. A little more tannin structure than the Carneros, but it's just kind of silky. I feel it in a little different part of my palate. Yummy nonetheless. So for me, like Stag's Leap, I can pair this with a beautiful charcuterie board. I can do this with some lamb, duck confit would be wonderful. I could just drink it. I call it pairing it with a glass, a second glass, a third glass, a fourth glass, and then kind of done with the bottle. So sometimes you just pair wine with a glass and it's call it a day. It's a beautiful thing. Let's go for that third sip. Yeah, definitely a little more tannin than that Carnero, so definitely want some food with that. A little bit of fat, so maybe one of those little rosettes would be a nice little pairing. So give that a try, have those first few sips, geek out. Once again, our 2016 Cab, 100% from the Stag's Leap district, 100% Cabernet, 22 months in the barrels, and this is 22 months in the barrels. 70% new French oak and 30% neutral French oak, and this is $125 a bottle. So cheers. All right, welcome back. It's time for the Calistoga Cab. So we're gonna have the 2016 Calistoga Cab. This is coming from 2 acres in the northern part of the Napa Valley, and actually our hottest 2 acres that we're gonna have here for our Cabernets. So let's do a quick review. We were down here in Carneros. We went up here to Stag's Leap, and now we're going all the way up to the top of Calistoga. So we're on the volcanic side of the mountain range, just underneath Mount St. Helena. So up in Calistoga, we're gonna hit 98, 102. So it's gonna be hot, hot, hot. As these grapes are gonna ripen first and foremost, and with that little bit of heat, we're gonna get some more tannin structure. So let's go ahead and get this wine in our glass. This is the 2016 Calistoga Cab, 100% Cabernet, little 2 acres up there, 22 months in the barrels, 70% new French oak and 30% neutral French oak. So just like we had for Carneros and we had for Stag's Leap, just gonna be a little different location. So all right, let's give it a spinny spin. Let's do our first sip, shall we? All right. I jumped into the tasting. I didn't even smell. See, I got excited. Let's go back and smell our wine. Right there in the center of that glass. Gives you the best expression. All right. So, getting a little different flavor profile. See, it just keeps making me want to drink this wine. Going for that second sip. All right, a little different flavor profile that we get, a little different than we get from Stag's Leap and Carneros. Tannin. I'm getting some tannin structure, so I'm feeling this in a little bit different places on my palate. I actually feel a little bit of a grip right here in front of my my lip, between my lip and my gums. Yeah, kind of just really identifying that there is definitely some more tannin structure. It is some fruitiness. It has some more fruit forward. So it has a little bit, for me, a little bit of a smoke component. Some of my darker notes, and a little bit of an oak, some vanilla notes. You can see I just keep jumping into this wine. I have to drink it. So what I love about this wine, for me, this is a wine that I want with food. I'm gonna have something that I hit with the grill. A nice steak would be beautiful. I could do this with a burger. I could do this with a brisket. Ribs would be really yummy. So there's a little bit of that smoke component I get out of this, and this isn't because we had any fires up there in 2016. That was a whole different year. Whole different story, but this is going to have just a little bit more tannin structure, a little bit more mouthfeel, and this is our 2016 Calistoga Cab. So sometimes you go for extra credit. I like 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 sips. Who's counting, right? All right, let's do it. This retails for $100 a bottle, and just really beautiful. So with our cabs here at Handwritten, we're really just showing off those districts and how each of these districts has its own unique expression to these wines. There's different tannin, there's different aromas, there's different fruitiness, different acid levels, and that is the beauty of this wine world and the beauty of this Napa Valley. All these different microclimates, these different soils, and really showing off everything that we have to offer through a Cabernet program. So can't wait for you to come visit us one day. We want to just give you a big thank you. Thank you for supporting Handwritten and my sister winery, Jessup Cellars. We are the Good Life Wine Collective. That is our parent company name because we're living the good life here, and we got to take that and run with it. So just big thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your support. We want you to be healthy and happy, and cheers to you. Cheers to our fans, and we just want you to have a really great wine tasting experience, and we can't wait to host you in person. So be well, and cheers to you. Thank you.